Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining this webinar where we are going to discuss our Overdrive technology with Medtronic. Thank you very much for your patience. We'll be kicking off in a few seconds, if not 2 minutes. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's 2 minutes past 6, so for the sake of the time that we have today for this 1-hour webinar, I want to kick off this call and want to introduce you one of our keynote speakers. His name is Professor Jean-Pierre Van Vleuten. Probably most of you know him. And he's one of the key opinion leaders globally with more than 30 years of experience treating patients with chronic pain, and more specifically, treating them with neuromodulation therapies, such as spinal cord stimulation or intrathecal drug delivery. He's recognized for his big cases and the number of cases that he's been done. Intractable cluster headache, for example, with what has been done around the world. I have here your book, Professor Van Vleuten, on the treatment of different gastric ganglion, the matter of your PhD. He's consulting in anesthesia and pain management, and he's indeed the director of the Multidisciplinary Center in AC Nicolas, in St. Nicolas, a city which is based in Belgium. He will kick off this webinar and will share with you his vision and research on why the battery inside implantable neurostimulators is so important for both physicians and patients. Thank you very much, Professor Van Vleuten, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pablo. Thank you for this nice introduction. So I'm very happy actually this afternoon to share with you my experience with this Overdrive battery technology, which we use regularly, and you will see that it has a lot of advantages for the physicians as well, of course. First of all, for the patients. The technology behind will be explained by Eric as the next speaker. Can I do the next slide? Yeah. So it's a breakthrough rechargeable battery technology with the Intellis name you know probably since many years. We will start with a few polling questions. So let's start with the first questions. What percentage of your patients have rechargeable devices? Can you answer now? I don't know the audience from which countries they are, but it will also depend on the reimbursement policy of the different countries, of course. So we see that about 30%, 30% of the responders have 50 to 80% of their patients having a rechargeable technology. So it's a lot. Huh? It's a lot. Again, depending maybe on the reimbursement policy. In Belgium, where we live, there are some restrictions, and we only can implant rechargeable batteries when there is a high energy consumption. And you see, of course, with the new waveforms that we have more and more energy consuming waveforms, and that the rechargeable technology is very useful. The second question, within the rechargeable implanted patients, what is the most common complaint you receive as a physician? Is that loss of efficacy? Is that troubleshooting with the patient controller, recharge burden, or other? Recharge burden is the most frequent answer, and you will see that I show you the results of a study, actually with a huge number of data, and you will see that, yeah, probably you're right, that is recharge burden the most frequent complaint. Third question, how frequently do you use high energy waveforms? So that's the new waveforms, like high frequency, like HD, like burst, and so on. Oops. About half of the patients in most answers. I lost contact here. Sorry, I can't see the slides. Is there a technical problem?
You just have to select your PowerPoint presentation again.
I have to stop sharing then. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry for that. So half of the patients. And we see that, you can hear me now? You can hear me?
We can hear you, Professor, but we cannot see the screen yet. If I can share it, if you can't.
Can you start can you share the presentation, please?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I think it's the Wi-Fi here in yeah.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
So you go to the next then, Pablo? Yeah.
Sure.
Sorry for that.
No problem.
Yes, here you see the publication which came out in Neuromodulation in 2017. It was a study on, we followed actually 955 implants, not patients, implants. And we were looking what happened with these implants. And we were looking at the therapy-related explants of these spinal cord stimulation systems. And it was a retrospective multi-center study in our center, in the center of Frank Wille in Amsterdam, and Jan Vesper in Düsseldorf. So 3, let's say, high volume centers in Western Europe. And one of the conclusions was that manufacturers of spinal cord stimulation systems should be encouraged to develop technologies for rapid recharging, wireless communication, and hardware design with smaller batteries and ergonomic shape. That was one of the main conclusions of that study. Yeah, next. And this is patient opinion research. And then you see that what patients find important in rechargeable technology or in battery technology is a rapid recharge. They want, to have free time. After that, it's the volume of the battery. So the smaller the battery, the better. The thickness of the battery, again, the smaller the better. The shape of the battery, not square batteries, but not corners on the battery. And then the recharge interval. Next. You see how important it is that we have some free time, and we don't have to spend the free time recharging our battery. Next. This is, I think, the most important part of the study we published, and you can see here, next, that this is a study with a follow-up time of 6.5 years. And you see that, one, spinal cord stimulation is indeed a long-term therapy, because you see that after 6.5 years, we still have between 71 and 79% of the batteries still running. The difference between the 71 and the 79 is the blue bar on the top is the loss to follow-up patients, 75 loss to follow-up patients. If we assume that they all are still implanted, then there are 79 patients, battery, 79% of the devices still in use. If you assume that they were all explanted, then it's 71. But still, it's a high number of these 955 batteries that are still running after 6.5 years. So it's really a long-term therapy. If you look at the explants for inadequate pain relief, it's actually less than 10%. And most of the explanted batteries, you cannot see that in this slide, but most of the explanted batteries were rechargeable batteries, and especially in the high frequency stimulation patients, there were most of the explants recorded. Next. So there is definitely a difference between a battery and a battery. Like George Orwell said, not all animals are equal. All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. Well, that's the same for batteries. They all look the same, but there is a huge difference in the technology of these batteries. In the Overdrive battery chemistry, we see that 95% of the capacity is still there over 9 years, which is not the case for the other rechargeable batteries. The recharge experience over 9 years is consistent for the Overdrive technology, not consistent for the other batteries. The recharge time from completely empty to full is up to 1 hour in the Overdrive technology and up to 4 hours, which makes a huge difference in the other technologies. And the battery capacity in the Overdrive technology is independent of the settings, which is not the case in the other neurostimulation batteries. Next, please. Another big advantage is that you can go up to 3 centimeters in implanting these batteries, which is an increase in comfort for your patients. You know that one of the reasons for explant is, for example, erosion, because of these batteries are too superficial. They have fat necrosis, and at the end you will have erosis through the skin and infection and explants, of course, with a lot of problems. That's due to the fact that you cannot implant them deep enough, one, and two, to the fact that you have to recharge more frequently, which heated up a little bit the skin and which can increase or fasten the necrosis of the subcutaneous fat. So it meets the demands of current and future workflows. We know that the new waveforms actually and in the future will still be more and more demanding energy-wise. So you will have more and more energy consumption. Also, the shape of the battery makes it less heavy, and there will be less flipping batteries and over-discharge batteries with this technology. So it's definitely at the moment the smallest battery on the market and the best performing battery on the market at the moment. Next. So there is less than 1 hour, about 1 hour recharge from empty to full. It's 3 times faster than the traditional lithium-ion batteries. And another advantage is that the patient can recharge a completely discharged device. You will see that in my cases later on in this webinar. And also, it's actually very stable because 95% of the battery capacity is still there after 9 years, independent to the number of recharges and the energy you use in your battery. Yeah. So it gives more free time for your patients. So definitely this is the best battery in class in terms of recharge performance. This is a exceedingly stable battery performance regardless of the use, the battery recharge preferences, or the deep discharge. These are small devices with smooth rounded corners. That was one of the most frequent reasons of erosion of the bigger batteries. And there is also a very smooth communication out to 2 meters with your remote in this technology. So if you look at the right side, it's again what we asked in our conclusions from this publications, is that the manufacturers should be encouraged to develop this technology: rapidly recharging, wireless communication, smaller batteries, ergonomic shape. I think we met all these, we have all these criteria met in the Overdrive Intellis battery. So I think we give the floor to Eric now to explain a little bit the technology behind this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Van Voigten. And I remember perfectly the first Intellis implant that you have performed in Europe almost now 3 years ago. And this publication came out before that, which was absolutely matching the needs at that moment. So Intellis wasn't available at the moment, and you have published this famous article, which was matching basically the characteristics that Intellis brought at that moment. So that was a good moment. Let me now introduce you Eric Scott. So Eric Scott has been working for 20 years in Medtronic. So he's a Medtronic employee. He's a battery scientist and a device designer. And over this time, he has earned over 60 patents. So a big number of patents on his back. He has published book chapters and several dozens of peer-reviewed articles on battery and device design, and was named as a Medtronic Technical Fellow and Backend Fellow, which is a big honor within the Medtronic family. He holds a PhD in material science from the University of Minnesota, and he is kind of one of the co-inventors of Overdrive. So we're very happy that he's keen to share with us the research, the work he's been doing with his and his team over the center in Minneapolis, where the batteries are being done with Medtronic. So thank you, Eric. The floor is yours. You can share your screen, and thank you for your time.
Okay. Good afternoon. Good evening, and it's a pleasure to address you all. Okay, I'm sharing my screen now. So my purpose in addressing you is to hopefully, first of all, have you understand Medtronic's commitment to a good patient experience in terms of the therapy as well as their device usage. The second is, I hope that by giving you enough detail about how we achieved the game-changing performance of the Overdrive battery, that you're able to answer questions when your own patients ask you about them, and hopefully you can answer them confidently, because this is truly a unique and different standpoint of performance compared to anything that we've seen before. I'll give one disclosure here before I start. When I say the word battery, I'm referring to the power source inside the can. And I know that we also use the term battery to refer to the entire device. That's fine. But I'm going to talk about Overdrive, which is how we achieved that power source. So let's start with a quiz, just as Professor Van Voigten did. And this is a bit more for fun, but hopefully you'll enjoy it. Which company do you associate with great battery technology? And the three options are Apple, Tesla, and Medtronic. So if you wouldn't mind making your choice here, we'll show the results in a minute. Woohoo! Okay. All right. So good. A lot of Tesla fans. People recognize. I'm glad to hear that Medtronic is recognized. Apple 4%. Well, interesting. Okay. Let's move to the next question here. From your knowledge of battery, from your experience, possibly your experience with an Apple device, how much degradation in battery performance does a traditional lithium-ion battery experience after a year of cycling once per day? Greater than 10%, greater than 20%, or it depends? Go ahead and make your choice. Okay. Yeah, so, you know, I would accept any answer here. And it's clear in terms of the it depends that in general, the way a battery is used can have a profound effect on how long it lasts. That is, in general, a limitation of battery technology. It's present in how we use our consumer devices. By the time this talk is done, I hope that no one would say it depends with regards to overdrive. And again, I will back that up with data to make that clear. Final question is, what would you do with nearly 10,000 hours, 9,855 hours of free time, of extra time that you were suddenly given that you didn't have available before? And by the way, that equates to 58 weeks, somewhat more than a year. Would you travel the world, sail around the world perhaps? Would you become a professional pianist, which books show and studies show that 10,000 hours of practice are what's required to become proficient and great at a thing? Or would you play with your children for 3 hours every day for 9 years? Precious time. Okay, lots of world travelers, and perhaps everyone already is a professional musician. Okay, good. So overall, I think these answers express what we might do if we were free to follow our dreams, rather than being tethered to our medical device or our recharger. So thank you for those answers. Okay, let's get started with the rest of the talk here. Thanks for participating. The first thing I'd like to share in terms of what sets Medtronic out compared to other manufacturers of spinal cord stimulators is that we make the battery, the power source that is inside of every device that we've ever sold for neurostimulation, as well as our pain pumps. And that we've been in the business of manufacturing and developing game-changing technology for just the power sources for over 40 years. This legacy started with the founder of our company, Earl Bakken himself. It continues. And the reason that that's true is our commitment to quality and performance. So in other words, when new technology comes along that allows us to deliver something great to your patients, it's important that we are absolutely sure that it's ready for us. Consequently, over this period, we've created and issued over 550 patents. We have 150 R&D engineers and scientists, and this is on top of the people working in our manufacturing lines. And we are indeed the world's premier manufacturer of medical devices. The timeline on the bottom is something that I don't have adequate time to go through, but what I'd like to illustrate is that we have had a sequence of unique innovations in the battery space, initially to power our cardiac devices, which was the beginning of our world in implanted active medical devices, and then in neurostimulation. Each node here was a very important advancement. And if you remember only one thing about the battery, I hope it's this, is that they're not all the same. So not just size and shape, but things that govern longevity and power. To make that more vivid, I'll point out that the average power consumed by a pacemaker is about a couple microwatts. This is 1/1,000,000th of the power needed for a defibrillator to defibrillate the heart. And so consequently, it's clear that no one battery would suit all. The world changed in 2005 when we released our first rechargeable neurostimulator. And this was very exciting, I think, for Restore, because no longer did patients have to face a difficult choice between long longevity and a large battery. And to make that extremely clear, with Intellis, here we have the world's longest lasting neurostimulator, as well as the world's smallest implantable spinal cord stimulator. So again, technology enables us to free ourselves from these constraints. And again, Medtronic being unique in this world of outsourcing, Medtronic chooses to insource our power sources. Let's go into some detail about how batteries function. So again, so we have this appreciation for what must always be true and what's special and different for Overdrive. The starting point is to say, what is a battery? Well, my explanation for a battery in the most simple sense is that it's a chemical reactor in a can. It's a chemical reactor. You put it in a can, you don't maintain it for decades perhaps, and it needs to function very well. There's lots of easy ways to make batteries, and there's lots of easy ways to make bad batteries. There's hard ways to make batteries, and there's hard ways to make very excellent batteries. A potato battery functions and does something. I make potato batteries with 7-year-old students in elementary schools. All you need is a zinc-plated galvanized nail, a copper penny, and a potato. This illustrates that every battery has 3 components to it that are fundamental. The anode, and in this case the nail, the cathode, in this case the penny. An anode has an electrochemical reaction that liberates electrons. The cathode consumes those electrons. The electrolyte is a medium through which ions move back and forth. When we do that, we have energy given to those electrons to do things. To get more specific, a lithium-ion battery has an anode and a cathode, an electrolyte. In this case, I'm showing the lithium ions as purple dots here, which in a charged battery ready to do some work, they live inside of the anode. So they exist within the planes of carbon atoms in a typical lithium-ion battery that form sheets of graphite. When we discharge that battery, those ions move across through the electrolyte to the cathode, and as they liberate energetic electrons, we put those electrons to work. Putting them to work can mean lighting a light, can mean driving a computer or a cell phone, or driving a spinal cord stimulator. What's special about a rechargeable battery, in particular a lithium-ion rechargeable battery, is when we apply voltage to the system from outside, we can drive that reaction the other direction. We can reverse it. We charge the battery. Now, to make a point about reversibility, and I think this is one of several profound things that you can remember, is when we think about chemical systems, and we've all had chemistry in high school and college, reversibility and efficiency of reactions is an interesting thing. So let's just imagine that a battery was 99.9% reversible. Well, if we think about the impacts of that, that would mean that if we did the charge and discharge 1,000 times, oops, that battery would be useless at the end. So in other words, 0.001 times 1,000 is 1.0. We've used up that, not just the battery's energy, but its ability to store energy. So consequently, if we think about how sublimely we must design a battery, we're thinking about lots of nines, 99.99 or 99.999% reversibility. This is rare in any chemical system, okay? And this is the system that we weld up inside a can, put it inside a device, and ship to our patients. When we design a battery, we need to think about lots of things. And this is just a subset, but I think these are important ones. And this would be true for just about any battery for any purpose. So the axes I'm showing on this radar plot are energy density, which is the ability to store energy in a small package. Energy is the ability to operate for a long period of time between recharges. Cycle life is the ability to be recharged and discharged many, many times, reversibly. So in other words, that 99.999 thing. Calendar life, the ability to be stable over time. Chemical systems degrade over time. We want them to be stable. Deep discharge tolerance was mentioned by Professor Van Boynton as an important use case where if a patient is non-compliant to recharge for any reason, we want that device to be capable of being brought back with no negative consequence. And finally, I'm putting together power density and recharge rate, which are somewhat related. So again, when we design as engineers, there is always a trade-off to be made. We make our trade-off, hopefully wisely, depending on what's important to our market. We can imagine, this is qualitative now, but we can imagine in the space of consumer electronics, including my Apple phone, energy density is more important than just about anything. And because we want our phones to be small, and we also want them to last at least a day between recharge, otherwise that would be failure. And so Apple has chosen to optimize energy density at the expense of other attributes. And arguably that's an acceptable use case. Other consumer product spaces optimize in different ways. So we're glad that innovation is happening in the world of electric vehicles. And one should quickly understand that they optimize this equation in a different way for the simple reason that anybody's car is a big expense. And when we invest in expensive things, we'd like them to last a long time. And so consequently, you see that cycle life and calendar life have been brought up as being important. And we've seen that be delivered in electric vehicles. Which begs the question, what about spinal cord stimulators? Well, of course, we want everything. And I will just say, and you should understand by the time we've shown the data, that we have optimized for these attributes in a way that we think sets us apart from anybody in our competition, and in a way that is noticeably good to you and your patients. The image at the right shown here is just to convey the detail within the design of the battery, the power source that's inside the neurostimulator. I won't go through all these details. I'll save you from that. But again, to see this listing in blue of components of the battery and in dark blue at the bottom, some of the features we need to do to make them different from other batteries. One of them being that battery is hermetic. It's perfectly sealed from the outside world to protect the corrosive battery ingredients from the body and vice versa. And of course, we do this manufacturing and design under enforced quality conditions by regulatory bodies. I mentioned innovation happening in the world of batteries. This is continuous, and of course, this has enabled revolutions in our world and in our lives, from consumer electronics to electric vehicles. I'm showing in the banner here an article from the Journal of the Electrochemical Society. I would imagine that most people in this audience don't read the Journal of Electrochemical Society. So as a matter of context, I'll point out that this would be the Lancet of electrochemists and battery scientists. So a highly regarded, high impact factor journal. The article shown is a review article to talk about what's been important in the last several years. This is the most downloaded article 2 years running through the Journal of the Electrochemical Society. People read this, it's valuable. The text shown at the bottom is my analysis of what the article said. The analysis is in the form of a word cloud. Larger fonts indicated more frequently entered words in this. So instead of reading that complex review to you, I'll say, what are the things that seem to be important in the battery world? And in yellow, I'm highlighting among the largest font is performance, capacity, power, energy, voltage, cost. I'm now highlighting design attributes that seem to be important. All of the ones shown in pink have to do with either the cathode itself in general or specific materials like NMC and NCA, which comprise a cathode. So these are the hot topics in the battery world. So what's not a hot topic in the greater world of batteries? The anode, shown in purple, tiny font. And when the anode is mentioned, most often it's described as being made of graphite, which of course is the common universal anode material in most batteries. So again, to point out that most of the world that cares about batteries is thinking about performance in the form of energy and the cathode. It makes us ask the question, what might we be missing when we seek to optimize the battery equation? I'm showing this again at the left, in a different way from the rest of the world. As a scientist, and it was just a hypothesis in the beginning, we said, what if we took a hard look at the anode and questioned some of the dogma associated with graphite anodes? So I'm calling this slide our carbon footprint. Carbon being the chemical atoms that make up graphite. Graphite's shown here as a cartoon. You see the planes of carbon atoms that are arranged as graphene and in layers. As mentioned, graphite loves lithium. It can insert lithium ions. It does so at a potential very close to the potential at which lithium would rather exist as a metal. It's 50 millivolts above the lithium plating potential. The consequences of that will become clear here. When you charge a graphite-based lithium-ion battery, or design it wrong, or charge it too fast, you can indeed plate lithium. That 50 millivolt margin is easy to use up. And what I'm showing here, the silvery stuff in this image, the black stuff is graphite, that belongs in a battery. The silver stuff does not belong. So this is taking apart a battery after its use. Lithium plating is not something that we like. First of all, it leads to rapid degradation of the battery performance, and it can be a safety-related failure mode. This is just another view of lithium plating on the edges of a coil, shown in the image in the top of the pair of images here. And here's a more performance-based view of what can happen to help understand what's critical in a graphite-based battery. I'm showing two curves, two prototype designs, pink and blue. The x-axis is the number of cycles, and the y-axis is the capacity or energy stored in the battery. What we try to do is adjust the ratio of anode to cathode material. That's what I mean by cell bit balance. And in the first hundreds of cycles, the pink battery was indeed performing better. If you're going to be a battery scientist, one needs to be patient and go more than years and hundreds of cycles. We need to go into the thousands. And what we observed is a failure mode in which that capacity degraded. We cut the ratio too finely. And again, a good battery scientist will know this and optimize for it. What I'm showing here is there's an important design trade-off here that needs to be understood and managed. The last one to be shown is that a traditional lithium-ion cell is thermodynamically unstable if discharged to 0 volts. The fact that we see bare copper in this image, which is the anode taken out of a battery after usage at 0 volts, we don't want to see bare copper. The graphite has come off. And again, let's just leave it at that. Say, these are the consequences of our carbon footprint. When we design a battery as well as we can probably manage these, but we should ask, how could we do even better? Here's a thermodynamic view of the battery, and we won't spend too much time on this, but this is necessary to make it clear. The vertical axis is the electrochemical potential. You can think about it as voltage. Of the cathode, shown as an oxide near the bottom, which operates at about 4 volts. The anode shown at the top, which in a lithium primary battery is lithium metal. In a lithium-ion battery is carbon. We see a chemical reaction here, 50 millivolts above 0 volts. We have lithium ions inserting into carbon. That's the anodic reaction. What's perhaps counterintuitive is if we used another material that was not near the lithium potential. So I'm going to offer here lithium titanate, Li4Ti5O12. Don't need to remember that. What's important is it inserts lithium just like carbon does, but it does so at 1.5 volts, not at 50 millivolts. And how does that change battery performance? Well, it does in a very important way. So this material was discovered in the 1990s. And so this publication shows the discovery of this raw material and the discovery that it was a zero strain material. What does that mean? Let's come back to graphite a second. When purple lithium ions are inserted and removed from the graphite anode during charge and discharge, you see those planes of black atoms expanding and shrinking, breathing in, breathing out. That's about a 10% change in size. When you do that thousands of times, you're subjecting all elements of that battery to strain that can lead to mechanical wear out. That is real. Lithium ion batteries that use a lithium titanate anode cycle lithium ions in and out. In a zero strain way, the lattice, so those dots are atoms of titanium and oxygen, lithium, it doesn't shrink and swell, even when lithium ions go in and charge and discharge. So this is responsible for one of the key attributes of overdrive, which is the long life associated with zero strain. There are many innovations that we created in order to perfect a lithium titanate battery. And they're protected by our patents. We actually have over a dozen, but some of the key ones shown here. And the fact that there are many is merely an illustration that to make this battery work really well means to manage lots of new things that have to all happen in the design and manufacturing. And so the secrets of overdrive, you can read these patents for yourself if you like. Let's come back to performance now. This is data on charging of the battery cell on the bench. So not in an implanted device, on the bench. And the biggest point here is that in 30 minutes, we can charge that battery to over 90% of its capacity. Now, it's pretty easy to do that for a fresh battery, actually. To do it for a battery for thousands of cycles will quickly kill most batteries. And we show that this is stable for overdrive. And to make that even vivid, here's another image of lithium. So this is a non-overdrive battery with a graphite anode. The black is graphite. The gray mossy material does not belong in a battery. That's plated lithium because it's been charged fast too many times. And as I pointed out, plated lithium will be a sure way to reduce the life and create a very unhappy experience for the user of that battery. Another metric of performance is the stability, and we've heard reference to 95% of original capacity after 9 years of use. That's what's illustrated in the green curve here. So the y-axis is capacity, the x-axis is cycles. The green curve of overdrive is nearly dead flat. And I really do hope that that's memorable. We've not seen that in any rechargeable battery that's been in anybody's life before this. And to give a counterpoint to that, I'll compare it to two examples. So first, the orange dotted line, that's the fade curve of the raw cell known as the Panasonic NCR18650B. So why that cell? Well, first of all, it's just an average lithium ion battery, number one. B, it's used in a very above average application, which is a Tesla vehicle. Nonetheless, that battery in 500 cycles has lost more than 30% of its capacity when cycled per the manufacturer's specification. So this is data from Panasonic. Why do Tesla cars do better than that? It's because we're not using them to their full extent of their capability every time. We're not driving them 350 miles every cycle. And so if anybody in the audience is a fan of Tesla or owns one, I'm a fan of one, I would recommend taking Tesla's advice. So when they publish, whenever possible, don't let the battery go below 90% or above 90% or below 20. That's a good thing to do. So in other words, don't use a Tesla supercharger every single day, because I believe that most users would prefer to have the red data performance, not the orange. And if you want to do better, still we'll have to build our cars with overdrive batteries. We're coming close to the end here, and I want to just summarize here by reinforcing Medtronic's commitment to safety, reliability, and quality. I hope that that is made clear through the details that I've shared and the commitment we've made to delivering an excellent performing device. Again, in the world of outsourcing, Medtronic is committed to manufacturing as the means to keeping our quality consistent. And we're the only company to design and manufacture our own SCS device batteries. And finally, we back that up with data. We do testing all the time. At any moment in time, we have somewhere between 15,000 and 20,000 batteries on test continuously at our lab. And those tests take for up to 20 years. So again, it's important that when we talk about long life, we back it up with real-time data. And as such, it's my pleasure, and I'm very excited to share with you that Medtronic will be extending the warranty. This is a way of us backing up our promise and expectation of the Intellis family of devices to 9 years from what has been 5 years. And this is, of course, possible thanks to the Overdrive battery technology. And with that, I'll thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Eric. Amazing to see the chemistry and all the research behind the Overdrive, and good to see the 9 years warranty that it's been just approved for Europe. That's something that has been done for the US 3-4 months ago. We saw that in the NANS Congress. So we are very happy also to announce that we have now extended the warranty for 9 years, which is very unique for Medtronic and not the rest. Thank you, Eric. So if you don't mind, in order to continue with your deck, I guess you have also the next slides, and Professor Van Voiten, maybe you can continue now with the last topic, which is basically present a couple of cases from your own clinic. Thank you.
Yes, well, just you can hear me. Just 2 cases to show you actually the added value of the Overdrive technology and Intellis batteries. Can you give the next? Yes. Next slide, please. Yes. So the first case is the history of a 75-year-old lady with a failed back surgery syndrome, a typical indication for spinal cord stimulation. We implanted her with actually a quad lead in 1996, so it's a long time ago. At that time, we only had that possibility. We only had quadripolar leads with rather a high energy consumption, and so with a very simple battery. But even in these times, we had very good result with spinal cord stimulation in that indication, and the patient was very satisfied of the therapy, but high amplitudes, which was rather typical for these quadripolar leads. And we had to replace the batteries every 1.5 years until 2009. In 2009, we finally had the rechargeable batteries available, and she received a Restore Ultra rechargeable IPG in 2009, recharging every week for 4 hours at the beginning. But as years go by, she had more and more or less efficacy of the therapy, and we switched her to high dose spinal cord stimulation, and she had a better outcome. But of course, even she was very satisfied with the therapy. She had to recharge nearly every day for 4 hours. So she was very satisfied, but with a lot of recharge burden. 4 hours a day means something. Next. So in 2018, she had a battery replacement, and she was implanted with an Intellis with adaptive stim, meaning that the stimulations adapted to her positions, laying down, sitting down, and so on. And she was very happy with this therapy. Next. Here you can see on the screen of the programmer the number and the frequency of recharging. Now she is recharging every day with an average of 37 minutes instead of 4 hours with the Restore Ultra. It's very to use and to find a connection with the IPG, which was a problem before, and there is less recharge burden, and more time to live life again. I don't think the lady of 75 years old will sail around the world, but rather play with her grandchildren. Next. Second case is a 55-year-old active man, still working with the failed back surgery syndrome since 2009, and he was implanted with 2 octopolar leads, octats in that time, in 2010. And after the trial, he received a Restore sensor, rechargeable IPG because of high energy consumption. He was recharging every 2 to 3 days for 4 hours, but then he got sick, something else, and he had the long hospitalizations, and they did in 2015, and nobody was looking at recharging his battery, and this resulted in a total discharge of IPG. Things happens. So he needed a reset, and he lost about a quarter of the capacity of his IPG. So he was very satisfied with the therapy, but he was complaining about recharge burden and also pocket pain, probably due to frequently and long recharge at that time. Next. In 2019, he had an IPG replacement with an Intellis, again, adaptive stim. Next. And here you see his screen, his recharge schedule on the screen of the programmer. He's recharging now every 4 days with an average of 40 minutes. He had no pocket pain anymore due to the smaller size of the IPG and the deeper implant depth. No fear anymore for a total discharge of the IPG because of the Overdrive technology, and so less recharge burden and more time to live life. Again, you see that the requirements out of our study are met now with the new battery technology. And we have, actually more happy patients, but because we saw a lot of, of patients happy with the therapy before, but to be honest, we saw a lot of, let's say, mechanical complications or biological complications due to not the battery technology as such, but the size of the battery and the recharge burden of these patients. Okay, next. Now, we still have, 6 minutes, I think, for questions and answers. Pablo?
So because we have more than 100 participants here, everyone is on mute. I don't know, Ricardo, if they can unmute themselves or they need to write manually in the chat the questions.
They need to write in the chat.
They need to write in the chat. Okay. Yes. So I open the floor for those who have any questions. Please be our guest. You can type any questions here on the chat. I see there's participation from Flavio from Córdoba, Mendoza, Argentina. If there's any questions to the panelists, please go ahead and don't be shy. I guess I'm going to break the ice for Eric because I received this question. Sorry, there's one from Martin. Exactly. Why is Medtronic, that was my question specifically, why is Medtronic not producing the batteries for Tesla, or why Tesla is not creating this Overdrive battery on their cars? Sorry, Eric, you are on mute. Please, can get on mute, sorry.
Well, I thank the questioner because I ask that question of my leaders nearly all the day. So I say that with some pleasure, right? Because these are truly unique, and I think they could change the world in different ways. There is a simple reason, though, why the consumer world has not adopted Overdrive, and that is cost. These are very expensive batteries to make. And we feel it's absolutely worth it, and don't get me wrong, for this purpose. But in the field of electric vehicles and such, cost is super important as a competitive attribute. So the other part is, our factories are optimized for medical devices. our quality control is incredible. We also make them in a volume that is adequate for what we do, but a small compared to if we were building by the millions. And so consequently, the care we have in all of our manufacturing steps, which is highly appropriate, would probably be inappropriate in a consumer application. Thank you for the question.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, I believe that you need to pay like a lot of money if you want to have a Tesla with Overdrive. Any other questions? I have here one from Rick. How often are skin problems related to recharging that you have seen, Professor Van Buiten?
Well, I think I have to. Okay, you can hear me. I think that erosion of the battery is often due to frequent recharge, but also to the shape of the battery. It's a combination of both. With the old battery technology, the batteries have to be quite subcutaneous. And like I said, there is a fat necrosis, and there were heavy batteries as well. So the more heavy the batteries are, the more fat necrosis you will have. And that's the reason why the distance between the battery and the skin becomes smaller and smaller, and finally there is erosion. If you have on top to recharge for 4 hours every day with the belt pushing on the subcutaneous fat tissue, you will also increase this problem and have this erosion more fast, more quickly.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I have a new one here. They're popping up. I have one saying, do you think it would be possible, and this is probably for Eric, to leave the batteries in patients for 15 or 20 years from now in the future? I guess, would this battery have good performance after those moving forward the 9 years? Yeah.
So just so you know that when I give my answer, it's important that I'll disclose that we can't describe performance beyond what we're approved to do. Okay, so this is me talking as a scientist about what the battery will do versus what our promise is making to the performance of the device. So the device trips ERI at 15 years, as you know, and I think that on 15 years and 1 day, it will be a very good performing device. We continue to test our cells. So right now we have 9 years of real-time data on our cells, and that's what allows us to back up the warranty. We, of course, do accelerated testing to project beyond that. I think we'll probably publish that result as it comes online. I don't expect it to stop performing, but I'm unable to give a promise that I would back up with data beyond that. My hope, though, is that 15 years is a really, really good longevity for your patients.
Good, thank you. I have another one, maybe also for you, Eric, saying how long it took to create and test Intelli's, I would say, Overdrive battery.
Sure. Longer than I would like, and so my preface to the answer would be, if you or perhaps a child is going to university and wants to be a battery scientist, I think that's a wonderful career. But let's make sure that that person is okay with delayed gratification.
Yeah.
If I'm showing 9-year real-time data,
yeah,
and the device has been in the market for 2.5 years, it's quite clear that we had near final prototypes going 6 years before launch. And those were near final prototypes. So it took more than a decade of innovation to get this. And of course, it was important for us to get this perfect. We broke a lot of dogma to do this. We did some things that in the battery world, they said, A, would not work, and B, you should not. We took that seriously. We weren't glib about that. We weren't like, haha. No, it's like, yeah, we better prove that. And so there's lots of data that I'm not showing about how we stressed it beyond the conditions that it would ever be used to show that it would go that long. So short answer, more than a decade.
Okay, thank you. Professor Van Buiten, do you see a burden of recharge with HD with your patients? I guess with other batteries aside from Overdrive, with so high energy waveforms.
High energy waveforms, yes. If we use them, there is a need of more energy, so there is a need of more frequent recharging. So the better technology the battery has, the less burden it will be. But yes, it was absolutely a problem, and it's still a problem with other companies when we use high energy waveforms. And as you saw in the first polling questions, a lot of us are using high energy consuming waveforms, and probably in the future there will be more of that because it was proven that the results on the therapy are better with these new waveforms. So welcome to the Overdrive technology, I think, for our patients. Not only the recharge capacity, but also the shape. It's very important, and the shape and the size of the batteries matters a lot.
Mm-hmm. I have more questions coming in, so apologies for that. I maybe you are 1 minute plus the 7, but if you don't mind, we can go through them. One is coming also saying, what with the use of high dose in spinal cord stimulation, do you think it's going to increase in the coming years? I would say, are you seeing in your practice, Professor, the high energy? High dose?
Definitely, yes. If you compare, like in the 90s where we did the quadripolar leads, we just had tonic stimulation with a quadripolar lead. Now we use much more contacts and much more energy consuming waveforms, and apparently we have better results, especially on low back pain, for example, compared to what we saw with conventional spinal cord stimulation. So we use it more and more. Yes.
Thank you. I have another one that maybe I can answer that. It's regarding what is the usage of DTM in comparison with HD. So the answer is DTM is a high energy waveform. It's a high energy therapy. It's a combination of different parameters. So it's indeed a combination of all of them. So I would say it's at a level of HD or even higher. The next one is saying what maximum depth implant Intellis can be. I think we mentioned that clearly it's going to be 3 centimeters. 3 centimeters is the maximum depth that it's recommended in the IFU. And I have another one, which is in Spanish. The question is, do you think, Professor Van Buiten, that there is still a space for non-rechargeable batteries nowadays, taking into consideration the benefits of the rechargeable batteries today?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think so. I don't think there is. I think that's waste of money when we implant non-rechargeable batteries. Really waste.
Okay. Interesting. Good. That's all. 3 minutes already over the time. I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, both Professor Van Buiten and Eric Scott, for having the time to present today. And thank you very much for everyone to join this 1 hour here. I wish you a great evening or afternoon for Eric. Thank you very much and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye. Thank you, Pablo. Bye, Eric. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.